And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis. And as always, next to me is my co-host, Laraib, as we are super excited to break some emergency podcast news. Breaking news. The Saints signed Derek Carr in free agency. You know we had to talk about it. And we had to welcome on a very special guest, our good friend, Mr. Sam Schmidt. Welcome to the podcast. Huge Saints fan, known him all of our lives, basically. So we know we had to have him for this specific Saints podcast. We're going to be talking a lot about this move. What does it mean for the Saints, the Raiders, other teams around the NFL? So, Sam, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, Lewis and Laraib. Always a
Yeah.
big fan of the podcast, and I'm glad I could join.
Yeah, our biggest critic right here, as
Not
always.
really,
So
just biggest supporter.
that's what we need. Rob, you want to hit on anything before we hop into this news?
Yeah, draft is coming up, Lewis. We've seen a lot of guys in the combine, but we don't want to focus on that too much. Of course, a lot of stuff goes into the draft process and the combine process, but for us, low guys, we don't really dig it too much into that stuff. So we're going to focus on Derek Carr for this one, for the most part, Lewis. And let's start with you guys, the resident Saints fans. Now, how do you guys feel about this? Because last year you had Jameis Winston as the starter. He goes down and Andy Dalton is in. And you guys, have some good wins, have some really bad losses, the season's up and down, and ultimately you miss out on the playoffs. But now you bring in, an above average quarterback in Derek Carr, who's had a solid time in Las Vegas, but now he's here in the Big Easy. How do you guys feel about this and for the next season?
Sam, I'll let you start with that one.
Yeah, well, what I've known about Derek Carr and his history is that he's a healthy quarterback. So, as a Saints fan over the last few years, that'll be a big deal, having a quarterback under center every game, not having to game plan either Taysom Hill or some other third string quarterback into the game plan. It'll just be huge to our offense and uh, developing chemistry. And I'm just really excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. Availability for the Saints the past 2 years, that has been our biggest crutch because you could make the argument, and like I talked about during this whole last season, it was the instability that was our biggest problem. We didn't know who would be starting from week to week, whether it was Jameis, and then Jameis got hurt. We had to lean on Andy Dalton. And then there was those weeks where it's like, is Jameis healthy? Do we bring him back? Or do we keep going with Andy Dalton, who was getting us average to below average quarterback play? And you're right. Consistency is a huge thing that an offense needs. And that's what Derek Carr has been for the Raiders. I've always admired Derek Carr on the Raiders. I think he got a lot more flack than he really deserved. He played in one of the toughest conferences in the entire NFL in the AFC West the past 2 seasons. And don't forget what he overcame 2 seasons ago with the Raiders, with all the John Gruden drama, the Henry Ruggs drama. He willed that team to the playoffs in a very close loss to the eventual AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals. So I don't really, his resume, I think, is really good. And over his entire career, he's thrown for over 200 passing touchdowns and only 99 interceptions. And that's just consistency, because what the Saints have needed and is consistency at that position. Just get the ball to the playmakers, lean on the running game, and lean on your defense. And the big stat going around recently is Derek Carr has never in his entire career played with a top 25 defense. There's only 32 teams in the NFL. And the fact that he's going into a stable organization like the Saints with a stable front office, a really good drafting front office, and a top 10 defense in the NFL. Yes, the defense is getting older, but you have a lot of veterans on that defense who can cultivate younger talent like we've seen. Marshawn Lattimore, some of the younger talent has been getting groomed over the years to potentially come in and play big roles. Like we drafted a young corner, Alontae Taylor, who had played a really big role for the defense last year. So I just think this move brings stability. It brings, now, a lot of people are so hung up on, he's not going to come in and win you a championship. Well, he automatically makes you the best team, at least at the quarterback position in your division, no doubt. As it stands today, the Buccaneers, the Panthers, and the Falcons are nowhere close in terms of quarterback production like the Saints are going to get with Derek Carr. Now, things could change if Atlanta gets like a Lamar Jackson or if there's another big trade made, Aaron Rodgers, some other quarterbacks on the news, but there's never been any big traction, especially with those teams in regard to some of these bigger names. So it's going to be looking like the Saints will have the best quarterback in the entire division. And from there, you can kind of piece around the roster, because a really big, important thing is this is being done before free agency period even starts. And yeah, the Saints are still not in a great cap position, but they've already restructured a lot of contracts to get themselves in a manageable position to bring in other people around Derek Carr. Because the thing last year was no one knew who the quarterback was going to be. There were rumors of certain guys like a Deshaun Watson trade happening or other moves being made, where potential free agents were holding off on going to the Saints because they didn't know what the position of quarterback was going to look like. And namely, Teron Armstead, who went to the Dolphins, he said he didn't know what the quarterback situation was going to be. That's why he left. So it's so important to get that position figured out, and then you can figure out all the rest. But Laraib, I want to pose a question to you about what a lot of people have been saying online about the Saints is, we just had this kind of go all in for it past few seasons of big free agents, of kind of going all in on this championship window at the end of Drew Brees' career. Obviously, it didn't work out. And a lot of people are saying you need to, eat that pill. You need to take your losses, go into a few tanking years, and figure it out from there. Do you believe in that theory, or do you, like the Saints, keep trying to go for it year after year after year?
No, I love this move for the Saints, Louis. You look at this NFC. I know you said Derek Carr is definitely the best quarterback in the NFC South, and I can say confidently he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFC, period. You talk about just how top-heavy this NFC is. You have the juggernauts in the 49ers and the Eagles, and, you can throw the Cowboys in there. But besides that, the Saints are a top 5 team in the NFC now, in my opinion. And when you have these opportunities in football, you got to go for it. This is your shot to continue on from the Drew Brees era. We have an opportunity to, go far this year in the playoffs. I think with Derek Carr, with him, Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, and Alvin Kamara, those guys on offense in the NFC this year, when it's not looking that good, when guys like Aaron Rodgers are potentially moving on from Green Bay, the Vikings, of course, are frauds. The Cowboys are frauds. It's really on the 49ers team, who have question marks at the quarterback position. And of course, the Eagles, who lost their offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator. The Saints this year, Louis, I really like how they're going to go with Derek Carr. Of course, it's going to get some time for him to get acclimated into the offense. Of course, we'll see how the draft goes, how the free agency goes. But I really think this is a great move for the Saints, who can win their division easily and, be a home, potentially, host a lot of home games in the playoffs this year.
Now, Sam, I want to throw a question at you, kind of going off what Laraib said. Laraib said that Derek Carr is now a top 5 quarterback in the NFC. Now, you have guys like Kyler, but Kyler's going to be injured halfway through the season, so he's probably not going to have a full season for the Cardinals. Plus, there's a lot of other baggage with him that I don't trust regardless. Matt Stafford just came off a big injury. You have guys like Aaron Rodgers who could potentially be on the move. So you only have like 3 guys who are solidified top of the NFC, and one of them, Kirk Cousins, I don't trust. Dak Prescott, do you really trust Dak Prescott? And Jalen Hurts, yes, he had a really good playoff run, but is that sustainable going into next year with the risk of injury being so evident in his play style? What do you think of the Saints' future going into next season as a potential? What do you think the Saints' potential could be next season with this move?
Well, I think our baseline expectation as of today should be to win the division and host a playoff game.
Agreed.
That's my expectation. That's been my naive maybe expectation ever since Drew Brees left. But the biggest thing that this move reinforces is that credibility that our front office has, that our coaching staff has, and it just brings back, I really think this move brings back stability in not only an on the field person, but an off the field person who we've been missing since Drew Brees' retirement. And as of where we are in terms of the NFC, I'm not sure where we rank, but I can.
Well, so how do you feel about, of course, the 49ers and the Eagles are the top 2 teams, but how do you feel about the Saints stacking up a team like against the Vikings or the Cowboys? Because if in those situations, of course, Derek Carr's going to be in his first year as a Saint, but against the teams like the Cowboys or the Vikings, how do you feel about the Saints matching up against them?
I think the biggest question we have now is obviously with Alvin Kamara. I'm not sure how soon that his situation will be resolved. But if it's not resolved, that's good for us because it means he'll be on the field. The defensive side of the ball, our health has been an issue the last couple of years. And if we can stay healthy, and I think we draft on that side of the ball this year, I don't see why we can't beat those teams.
Yeah, I'll say realistically right now, Laraib, to kind of piggyback off what Sam was saying, I think we're a second tier contender in the NFC. I still don't believe in this roster that much to put ourselves against a team like the 49ers or the Eagles as it stands at the moment. Now, a lot of things can change in free agency and the draft, and I do. And what Sam was kind of alluding to is something that does give me hope about this team, and just for the Saints in general, is the past few years, we've kind of questioned this front office. And was it more Sean Payton? Was it more Drew Brees that was keeping this whole team together? The fact that you're able to get a guy like Derek Carr to commit to the Saints on a long-term contract shows that this front office still has a reputation amongst NFL circles as being one of the lead front offices that players, free agents, and draft prospects can trust and have a lot of respect for, which as a fan is just so like a gasp of fresh air, considering where we've been as a franchise and looking at, I'm a Pels fan. I don't feel that way with the Pelicans, but in other NFL circles as well, just to have that faith in your front office and guys like Mickey Loomis who have the respect amongst the league, that's a big thing for our franchise. So I'm glad that you brought that point up, Sam.
Sorry,
yeah, you go.
I'm going to interrupt you. It's really reassuring that our front office is willing to win and invest money in the team and not just take this backseat mentality of waiting for a draft pick to come save the day, which
I
is
agree.
just horrible and like historically in the NFL just isn't how you build a team. You don't build a team by losing. You build a team by always trying to win and picking up free agents that want to come play for you on team-friendly contracts and building around a star quarterback, which hopefully is Derek Carr, but I'm just expecting that this just extends our window of being a competitive team in the NFC.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sam. And the thing that a lot of people want to bring up is, you want to get the really young, flashing star quarterback because they're cheap, they're very valuable, and you can reallocate your assets towards more important positions of need now that you have your quarterback assembled. But it's not always that easy. Whenever you're getting a high-end quarterback, you have to suck for a year. And regular like players, free agents, they don't want to go to teams that suck. You have to put a lot of capital into that and just hope that this guy who comes in can totally change your franchise. And so many teams have gotten burned with that train of thought. And you're absolutely right, Sam. You keep a winning culture. You keep savvy veterans. You keep guys who want to play for your team. And that's how you keep a winning culture. And just hope that one of these years things strike the right way and you can make a run. It's the NFL. It's one of the most just like the parity in the league is so one of the greatest things that a team can go from 0 to 100 just like that. But if you keep staying the course, keep being competitive, not only is it good for your fan base and good for just the morale of the city, but it's just good for the front office in general to retain that respect. And especially when you're not in a huge market, like a desirable market like New Orleans, one of the biggest things you can sell to free agents is stability, which is a huge thing that players want to believe in and want to put their futures into, which is very underrated. But Laraib, I want to flip this question over now to some of the other teams that were in the race for Derek Carr. We can talk more about the Saints fit with him in just a second, but the teams like the Jets and the Panthers and the Texans who are also throwing their hat in the race. I want to talk to you specifically about the Jets, Laraib, because it seemed like he was favoring the Jets for a while, but obviously didn't go there. Now, do you think that the Jets are putting all their chips in the table for an Aaron Rodgers type move, or is there something else they're trying to do? Because if their plan at the end of this free agency, if they walk out and Zach Wilson is still their starting quarterback, it's going to be a failure of an offseason for this Jets team.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit in our last episode, how they brought in offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett, his Aaron Rodgers' former offensive coordinator in Green Bay, to try to lure him over. And it seems like with the reports we've been getting is that Aaron Rodgers is done in Green Bay. And so, he could be moving on to a team like the Raiders. potentially, or moving on to a team like the Jets. But for the Jets, yeah, just like you said, if Zach Wilson is in at quarterback next year, it's going to be awful for that team. The locker room has completely given up on him. The city hates him. And so for to have him as your starting quarterback next year is just going to be a failure. So look for them to, maybe bring in Aaron Rodgers. We'll see what that Nathaniel Hackett connection is like, or, most likely reach for somebody in the draft, Lewis. Now you have a team like the Colts at the number 1 seed and the Texans at the number 2 seed. And you got a lot of guys in this draft, like Will Levis, of course, CJ Stroud, a lot of young guys who teams might potentially want to go for. So for the Jets, even the Panthers who are in y'all's division, look for them to kind of move up in the draft potentially and try to go for one of those young quarterbacks.
Yeah, Sam, and I want to throw this to you. The Panthers and the Falcons don't really have a plan, it looks like, and they're trying to go young at quarterback. The Panthers specifically, I like a lot of what they've done this offseason. I've always liked Frank Reich as a head coach. I think he was dealt a really shitty hand with the situation in Indianapolis last year. Bringing him in, and then, the hope was to either get a good quarterback in the draft or get a guy like a Derek Carr or a big free agent to go there. Because I like the Panthers roster. If you were the Panthers GM, what move would you make for this young team in a division where it is pretty gettable year by year?
Well, here's my thing with that. I'm not sure you make a huge drastic move where you're trading for a guy like Aaron Rodgers or another star quarterback in the NFL, whether it be Lamar Jackson or whatever quarterback shuffle is happening right now. I think if you're the Panthers, you continue to make smart moves in the draft, build up your lines, and then the table will be set for a quarterback to come and feast in the NFC South, which has just been a unstable division, and it will be even more unstable this upcoming year, seemingly, but who knows?
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe the Derek Carr move dissuades other potential quarterbacks from wanting to go to the NFC South because it's not as gettable. I would love that to be the case, but that could potentially be a domino effect for teams like the Panthers and the Falcons saying, maybe let's just go young, figure out the rest of our rosters. And like you said, I think Tom Brady set the example when there was all these big markets around the NFL. And it's like, oh, the Chargers, you could go to Las Vegas potentially when he made the move from New England. And he looked at Tampa and said, they have the roster, they have the skill positions, they have the team, they just need the quarterback. And he made the football move to go to Tampa. It wasn't so much market. I mean, Tampa's a good city, but it's not like top of the NFL. It's been a historically losing franchise, but he made the football move to go there because of what their team built. And you've seen a lot more quarterbacks like a Russell Wilson move to the Broncos, like a Matt Stafford to the Rams. These guys making decisions to go to teams that have basically everything else set up football-wise, and then they can go on a run. So that's definitely a teams are going to start doing that, getting the whole roster together and just hoping that a guy gets discouraged, a top end, free agent quarterback just comes available and they can get that guy and then they can go on a run. So I think that's a big thing. Now I want to talk about the Raiders at this moment. So they obviously get rid of Derek Carr, and in their division, it's one of the hardest. Sean Payton's now a Denver Bronco. You got to assume that offense and that team's going to be a lot better next season because of his presence. And of course, you have the reigning NFL champion, the Kansas City Chiefs, who are just going to keep rolling, and the Los Angeles Chargers, who made it to the playoffs last year as well. So do you think, what are the Raiders' biggest questions? Because we just saw recently they franchise tag Josh Jacobs. They want to keep him in the building, but they brought in so many veteran playmakers last year, like a Devontae Adams. They brought in Chandler Jones to make a run last year. Now they're getting rid of their starting quarterback. What move do the Raiders go for here, Laraib? Because you can make the Jimmy Garoppolo connection with Josh McDaniels. That could be a potential Aaron Rodgers destination. Where would you go with this? Because it's not like the Panthers, in which they just have a young ascending roster. These are guys who are willing to win now. So what do you do if you're the Raiders GM, Laraib?
Well, the issue is you want to bring in a veteran guy like Jimmy Garoppolo or Aaron Rodgers, but like you mentioned, you have to face the Chiefs and the Broncos twice a year and the Chargers twice a year. And so you talk about Aaron Rodgers, like, well, I want to go get a Super Bowl. Well, I don't want to go in the division with Patrick Mahomes and, lose in the AFC and not have a shot, where in the NFC, is a little bit more wide open. Like you said, they brought in all these guys, Lewis, in the offseason. But the thing that was lacking with the Raiders this year, they had the stars, but they never had the depth, Lewis. You can think about all those big guys on their team, but you think about, who's filling in those slots between all the rest of those guys, and they just didn't have their roster, Lewis. And so I think they go quarterback in this one. They have the 7th overall pick. Go quarterback, or if all the quarterbacks are gone, get a cornerstone defensive piece, because that's also been a big issue, right? You're going to bring in a star quarterback, but on the defensive side, Chandler Jones and, Max Crosby can only do so much on the defensive end. And then in the secondary, you're just getting toasted by Patrick Mahomes and anybody else all game long. And so I think they have a lot of work to do this offseason, this Raiders team. And it's going to start with, maybe starting to unload some of these players like they did with Derek Carr. They wish they could have traded him, but they had to release him. But a lot more guys, if they have some more time, start trading guys, or otherwise, then you just got to go all in. If you can get Aaron Rodgers, somebody who can, sell those tickets in that Las Vegas stadium, that's all for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a huge gamble with Aaron Rodgers, given his mentality, the wishy-washy behavior that we've always loved, for our longest time as Packers haters, as Saints and Seahawks fans. So I'd love for him to lead the conference just because he is that talented. But given the situation in Green Bay, Sam, you've dealt with Aaron Rodgers BS the past few years. Am I going to stay? Am I going to leave? Obviously, he's immensely talented. But after a season like last year, where he was not that effective, he didn't get along with the rookie receivers, and you lose a game late in the season at home to send you to the playoffs to the Detroit Lions, and you just fall apart as a team. So if you're the Green Bay Packers, Sam, do you just say, I'm so sick and tired of this experience, get Aaron Rodgers off my team, and stick with like a Jordan Love potentially and build around? They have a decent roster in Green Bay, and like the Saints, they have a decent football culture that can be respected. Or do you just deal with it because of the huge money that you have to give Aaron Rodgers? You've already guaranteed him $50 million to play this upcoming season, so that'll be a huge hit. What would you do if you're the Packers in this situation, Sam?
I think there's only one option for the Packers, and that is to deal with it. When you have a talent like Aaron Rodgers, the last season was more of an outlier than the norm for someone like Aaron Rodgers. So I think whatever he's doing right now.
Why do you think that is? You think it was the young receivers? You think it was the offensive line, the new offensive coordinator?
I think it definitely has something to do with him just being frustrated with whether it be the front office, the coaching staff, sure, or the receivers. But I think we're the direction he's going this offseason. I think he's trying to find peace within himself, wherever that might be. Not sure what he's doing right now.
It just sounds like such a damn headache. You know what I mean?
He's going to come out a fresher person. And I think he's going to have a new head on his shoulders. And I mean, like last season was an outlier. This is Aaron Rodgers. We're talking about easily, probably like a top 10 talent of all time in the NFL. You do everything you can to make this guy happy. You do everything to like win now with him. This is your best opportunity to win a Super Bowl is with Aaron Rodgers, not the next guy.
Yeah, and for the same reason that I said the Saints is this is a good year to go all in. It's the same thing for the Green Bay Packers. We have stability at the quarterback position with Aaron Rodgers, and there's only a couple teams in the top heavy NFC. Might as well go all in, even if you have to deal with him for a season or two more. This is, one of those opportunities that doesn't come around too often, where the NFC, only a couple teams, and it just takes one or two throws in a game, Lewis, and you're headed to the Super Bowl after defeating one of those top teams. And so it's going to be interesting to see what this NFC is like this year. Of course, my Seahawks, I have a big decision to take at the number 5 pick. Do we go quarterback? Do we go defensive cornerstone? Of course, Geno Smith, comeback player of the year, but we'll see what this NFC and landscape looks like a little bit more after the draft and after the free agency, Lewis. But before
Anthony Richardson on the Seahawks, Laraib, what do you think of that?
Maybe, but
sit behind Geno for a year.
I'd like that because he'd be garbage, but yeah.
Before we go, Lewis, your guy Carson Wentz was released from the Washington Commanders. So I wanted to ask you, where do you think your guy Carson Wentz is going to destroy another team's future this year, or is he done?
He's not done. He's not done. Do not count him out. There were reports of him potentially returning to Indianapolis. I think that'd be a good fit given the familiarity there. But obviously, he had a connection with Frank Reich, which maybe will lead me towards a potential reunion in Carolina. I know as a Saints fan, I would be terrified by that. But I mean, that would be just a good move for their franchise in general. All the sneering, all the BS, like it has to stop. Carson Wentz is a top 10 talent in this league.
Huh?
He is. It's just the negative attention he gets is so much more amplified. And he was leading the Commanders this season before he got injured. He had a really good team. He had good stats like he did in Indianapolis last year. And then some BS, Taylor Heineke crap comes forward and it's whatever.
Oh, and starts to win games?
No, not starts to win games. He played worse. The stats showed he played worse. He completed less passes. He threw less touchdowns. He just played this BS conservative way of football, which will not win you big games in the NFL. Carson Wentz wins you big games in the NFL.
Games like when they beat the undefeated Eagles at the time in prime time.
Whatever. You know what? I still believe in Carson. I was honestly kind of hoping the Saints would pick him up. But I'm pretty sure my friends would probably kill me for that
next year.
But you know what I was actually gonna end the show off was a bigger, you could say, quarterback in the NFL than Carson Wentz, arguably, is Lamar Jackson. Now obviously this is the period of the NFL in which the franchise tags and transition tags are handed out. And there's been no news as of yet whether or not the Ravens plan on franchising Lamar. Sam, if you are Lamar Jackson's free agent and there's such this wide gap on the amount of money that you are requesting and the team is offering, what is your move this offseason if you were Lamar's agent and you're planning out his future?
If I'm his mother?
Yeah, if you're Lamar's mom.
Yeah. Well, after I pack his lunch and whatever else he carries around, I think if you're Lamar Jackson, you have to, I don't know what you do. It's such a confusing situation to be in when you have such a stable franchise like the Baltimore Ravens.
I agree.
And they're offering you a ton of money. I just...
Now, I think the expectation... What really screwed it was the Cleveland Browns giving Deshaun Watson, after all that off-the-field nonsense, all of that guaranteed money. That's not the new norm. That's not what's supposed to be expected. That is a dumb franchise doing a dumb move. But now quarterbacks think that is the norm, and that's the new quarterback market, getting a fully guaranteed NFL contract for $200+ million. That is insane. You should never expect that. So the fact that Lamar is thinking, and like he should, oh, I'm better than Deshaun. I've done so much more than Deshaun in my career. Plus, I don't have all the off-the-field baggage. I should be given that contract. But like you mentioned, the Baltimore Ravens, a historically stable and just nice franchise for our entire lifetimes. They've won 2 Super Bowls. They're thinking of the Browns just did a Browns thing. We're not going to give all this guaranteed money to a guy who's not a guarantee in himself the past few years, given the injuries and given the play style. So I think he needs to accept the offer. Now, obviously, you have to play hardball. You want to get as much money as you can, and he deserves as much money as he can get. But you need to stay with the Ravens because, trust me, Lamar, the grass is not always greener. I know they haven't been able to get you that number 1 wide receiver on the outside, but Hollywood was pretty good. You still have Mark Andrews. You have a great offensive line, and you have a great front office and organization that you need to put your faith in. Because if you go to Atlanta and they're like, oh, wow, this is all of a sudden sucks. It's Atlanta. What did you expect, Lamar? I don't know. There's a lot of things that they need to review. And if he decides to, force a trade or force a way out, I think it'll be a stupid decision on his part, Laraib.
Yeah, I think just his connection with his head coach is too great for him to let go of. But if I am Lamar Jackson, I am not playing another down of football until I sign a contract. Just the brand of football that he plays is just a little bit too risky for him to go out there without having some money guaranteed. And so hopefully this team can get something done. I think, they have a really good Lamar Jackson. The Ravens have a really good combination. Of course, they're going to need a lot of help in the draft and some free agency. But Lamar Jackson, go ahead and sign the contract before you do anything else on the field. That's my opinion on that matter.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for this week's episode. We're going to, during the offseason, post more episodes, kind of news-based. We'll probably do a draft recap. Well, if there's any other big news, like an Aaron Rodgers trade, a Lamar Jackson trade or anything else big that happens, we will cover it. But mostly we're going to kind of take the offseason off and then prepare for next season as we do big previews, division analysis, things like that. So first off, thank you, Sam, for coming to join us on the podcast. Saints fans are really excited now, given what happened last season for stability at the quarterback position. I'm really excited for what this next season holds for the Saints fans. But that'll be it for the First and Goal podcast. Signing off.
Peace.